They were one of those kind of finicky, pain in the butt, But you know what? If you know what you're doing and you want to be in control, go for it, man. I'm okay. He found his way around the XR18 mixing software real quick, and they sounded amazing, So good. Yeah, but that's always the thing. Like, somebody had that. Oh man, I can get so much trouble for us. There's a YouTube video out there where these two engineers are discussing the crazy versus hot scale, and they're like showing, it's this linear, like where you can deal with like how hot they better be if they're gonna be that crazy or whatever. It's just pretty nuts, and that's kind of the same thing I would say with the bands is that if you're gonna be a pain in the ass, you better be really good, and they're really good. So and a lot of times people are a pain in the ass or because they had a bad experience with the sound man. I used to remember at the beginning of this show. We used to post pictures up of what I saw sound guys doing in Hawaii, where they would mic an amp by hanging a 57 or 58 off the handle, and the mic is swinging around in front of the speaker, micing the stage floor, and if they had something like that happen to them, they might want to be a control freak after that. So, you gotta, it's how it is. The other thing is, we're talking about background volume in clubs, and there was a lot of stuff, involved in quite a few nightclubs and stuff, because we had to do live recordings and stuff all the time back in the day, and they would always discuss, there's always arguments about this, but some clubs would have the house music, the music playing between the bands, super crazy loud, as loud as the band, if not louder, because recorded music you can get away with a lot more compression and everything else, not worrying about feedback. And then other club owners who would have quiet background music. I knew club owners who would fire bartenders if they chucked bottles into the garbage. You can't, it's hard. It might be a completely empty garbage can. You're dropping beer bottles into it. It's going to be pretty loud, but there's some that would just kind of chuck. And I remember there's club owners who would fire them for that, so they're always arguing, like, what is the atmosphere? Like, if it's super loud, aren't people just going to go outside? Like, they came here to see the band. They didn't come here to hear the house music, unless they're at like a dance club or something. And so there's always those arguments about volume, but I say even the stage volume, even the band's volume, even the show volume. There's reasons people go to clubs, and some of those reasons involve communicating with other people, and that's hard to do when it's super loud. I suppose, though, people could just sit there and text each other nowadays or something if they have each other's numbers. But, it's an interesting question, like just how loud do you want, and under what circumstances? You want loud house music? Do you want people to be able to talk even during the show? So I knew club owners who would solve the problem pretty simply by making a club acoustically where sound was attenuated quite a bit in one of the areas where you really wanted to serve them anyway, and it was also the entrance and exit to the club, and it just worked out that as you walk into the club, the band gets louder and louder because of the way it was laid out. That was pretty smart, and then people can talk if they want. They can move themselves as close to or far from the PA system as they want. Actually, a pretty good idea. Anyway, that's a lot of stuff about volume, and it's just important to think about. Do you want people talking out there? Do you want people? Sometimes bands want to be loud enough that they can't be the background. Like, people have to pay attention to them just because they're so loud they couldn't hear anything else, or even talk to anybody. That's one strategy. So you always think about that volume. Put yourself in the audience's perspective, and think about the different types of audience who are there. There's some members of the audience who are there to see you. They'll put up with just about anything. and they're not going to leave. They like you. Play loud, play quiet. They're going to be there for you. There's people who are there to meet other people. They may have a harder time with the high volumes because they won't be able to talk to the person they're trying to meet. Just that kind of thing. But then, we talk about this all the time is the stage volume, right? If your stage volume is too high, then every mic on stage pretty much becomes an auxiliary mic for whatever the loudest noise source is around it. And that may not be the source that the mic is aimed at. If you're standing in front of a double stack, 8 12-inch speakers, 5 billion watts, I don't care if you're singing or not, man. That that amplifier is what's getting in that microphone. So your stage volume matters. It matters a lot. And I'm trying to work this out in a way that is budget friendly for our shows. I really want to start getting our bands to point their amps at them backwards, away from the audience. That's one way to deal with it. But because of the omnidirectional nature of so much of this, these frequencies, it's not going to help that much. But it's a lot to think about, and it's something that coming from a software perspective, it's just what in the world do we. We can't do nothing for that. We're software. Sorry, but it's interesting to think about it. Oh yeah. So Simon Larkin is saying, did you ever see Motorhead live? No, I haven't. That'd be awesome. That's so sad, man. That guy like was born before anybody and then lived through so much and then just died now, But he says, they were loud. So yeah, I can imagine that. They used to say that if Motorhead moved next to you, your plants would die or whatever. So I'm not surprised if they were crazy, crazy loud. I'm sure that guy was plenty deaf by now. Okay, so where were we? Talking about stage volume. So really, I've been thinking a lot about in-ear monitors, but that's more for your band. Like, how do you... If you guys out there, Ed Rye, if you're watching this, how do you provide in-ear monitors for talent? Like, isn't the ear things all dirty and nobody wants to touch that stuff? So I'm not sure about that. So I'm just trying to think of ways. I'm getting some stands like diagonal. They point back at them, and try and encourage people that your amplifier is for you to hear. But I know there's so many different ways to handle this, and I don't want to make hard and fast rules. It's kind of crazy. The older I get, the less hard and fast rules I want. There's so much more nuance, not to bump any channel there, but yeah. So just remember that whatever your stage volume is as a band, your loudest instrument at that source, that mic is picking it up. So hopefully that's the instrument that you mean for that mic to pick up, and really think about that. Okay, so some stuff today. Where did it go? Okay, here we go. So we have a Black Friday sale. Wow. So Simon's saying Lemmy was a friend of mine back in the day and was deaf as hell. I'm not surprised, but it's awesome that Simon looks exactly like the kind of dude that would hang out with Lemmy. Okay, so we have a Black Friday sale, believe it or not. We have, let's see, ends midnight, December 30th. So what is that? I don't even know. So, you got some time. Now, one of the really cool things is the Iconic Reverb is available. We really wanted to have all kinds of stuff ready and just blow this thing up for Black Friday. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. But we're getting there. I'm trying to get the demo up so you guys can grab this demo right now. It's not up there. Sorry. If you need the demo, get a hold of me. But right now, I think he's selling for $60. This is a reverb I'm super excited about. You guys know how finicky I am about reverb. Like I am, I'm very unhappy with most of what we got. And this is something I've been thinking about working on for a while. Something I've had like 20-something years to think about. And I would love it if you guys try to reverb out. If you want, just get a hold of me for the demo until I think Jonathan will have it up by the time you hear this. But if not, get a hold of me. I'll get you a demo. But we do have a Black Friday sale going on. There's a new bundle, some kind of bundle, vocal producer pack, studio producer pack. We got bundles upon bundles. And if your bundle includes a plugin that you already bought, send me a message. I'll figure out something. I'm not a business guy. I'm just showing you, in order to keep this stuff coming, I got to tell you about these products, and hopefully you're telling your friends. But yeah, we got some Black Friday sales. We got our vocal producer pack with dynamic EQ, intuition compressor, and iconic reverb. Well, there you go. $100 right? Okay, never mind. I should have looked at this first. $100 this right now is going to get you all the plugins. You may as well buy it. Simon, yes, that's the same verb I sent you, but I don't know if you have the newest version. I'm gonna put the actually I'm gonna put the demo in the chat here. And anybody who wants to grab this, come grab it. And okay, hold on, installers. Copy Dropbox link. Okay, so here it is. This is version 2.0.1. And the Dropbox link is going to be on the YouTube, the Twitch, and the Facebook and all that stuff. And on Discord if you get on there. Okay, so next. Yeah, so you know what? Actually, that's a deal on half. If you just go buy the whole bundle thingy. We have some other... oh, wait a sec. Sorry. Hold on, I gotta get onto my my YouTube. Let me see my destinations. Sorry, guys. Open this in a new window. That's the live one. Hopefully that's going. Hopefully I didn't have the mic muted the whole time. No, because Simon can hear me. There we go. Okay. That is the link. And okay. So, now this isn't for money, but Valhalla Vintage Verb. I know I just talked about our reverb, and this is actually a competitor. But I like this reverb. I think we're going to beat it pretty soon. And you won't even want this instead of ours. But, you might have... Never mind. If you like Valhalla Vintage Verb, go buy Valhalla Vintage Verb. They just did an update. It looks like a free update, I think. Updated to 2.2.0 Cathedral mode. And it says the new reverb mode Cathedral. It's based on an algorithm he developed for Spin Semiconductor in 2014. Let's see. So Cathedral. Also modified the information text in the upper right corner. So if you own Vintage Verb, the update is in your user account. So log in and grab the latest installer. There you go. So nice, free. Did last night's show up? Oh man, I don't even think we streamed it. Shoot. That's a good question. Oh man, actually, that's freaking me out now. Okay. Also, Positive Grid. Okay, guys know I've mostly just switched over to Helix. I have an actual physical Helix and everything now. Bias FX is $180 off right now. Bias FX 2. That's a crazy deal. Yeah. So if you want Bias FX 2, there's go get it. Screaming deal on all the Positive Grid stuff, but this one's like 60% off. So if you go over to Plugin Boutique, they have, I know Black Friday, but it's still going on right now. Fab Filter up to 26% off till November 29th. And it says, Up to 25% off, including the bundles and the Pro Q3. They won an Emmy Award? There's Emmy Awards for plugins? Crazy. How did Multiband Gate not get one? All right. Sound Toys up to 73% off. Sound Toys plugins. XL Lens, so your addictive drums probably. Let's see. Retro Color, RC20, addictive drums and addictive keys. EXO, up to 50% off. Up to 80% off Eventide plugins right now. Wow. 72%, up to 72% off Isotope stuff. So, Music Production Suite, Arturia, Sonox Black Friday sale up to 75% off. Sheesh. Eventide Split EQ 45% off. More Isotope stuff. Melodyne Essential 50% off. Melodyne Upgrades 40% off. Yeah, I should go look at this actually. Melodyne Assistant 40% off. Melodyne Editor 37% off. Melodyne Studio 35% off. Softtube like 76% off. Antares, we've talked about that. I don't want to see. Antares, we need to talk. Heaviosity, oh boy. Is that the one we don't want to talk about? Because it sounds like a real guitar. Is that one? I'm scared of that thing. Mastering the Mix Black Friday sale. Okay, so these guys sell... I think that the reference thing, I think that's included in here. It's up to 18% off. It was already really cheap, though. Oh, here's another one, up to 51% off. It was already pretty cheap, so maybe I'll look into that. Anyway, go into Plugin Boutique. They got a screaming pile of deals. But even more ridiculous than that, this guy, so audiopluginguy.com has a thing. It says... Black Friday plugin deals 2021, and I'm talking it would take me a year to scroll through this thing. He's got so many things up here, and he's got a thing where you can have it show you as they come up. But man, I think if you're looking for any kind of deals, just type in on this guy's page, and I bet you'll find it. What was that Simon said? So Simon says, I'm happy with AIX, DSP, and Slate. If you need more than that to mix the track, you got a problem. Ooh, and speaking of which, did you see there's like a new 3-band, multi-band dynamics thing from Slate that looks pretty cool. Like keep us all on our toes. I want to work a certain way, but that doesn't mean I'm not watching everything and trying to make sure we got the best for everybody here as much as we can. Okay, so aside from that, gear page. Okay, so let's check this one out. No. We just the other day we were talking with a student, or thinking one of the bands about tuning. Actually, it's probably last night. So you guys know I'm a super stickler for tuning, which most of you are if you're engineers. After a while you just get crazy because you're like trying to fix things that just can't be fixed, and it just makes you pull your hair out, obviously. So she was asking about tuning. It's like, are the normal audience going to know that the thing's in tune or not? And this is one of those things. Like, I don't think that if you were to, if you play a chord and the audience, they'll probably know if it's out of tune, but they may not know that out of tune is a problem, or two guitars slightly out of tune with each other sounding kind of bad. They may not know the technical term for it. It just sounds bad. That's what they hear. They hear something that sounds bad. And that's what matters. It doesn't matter if they can tell us how many cents off something is or what the exact problem is. It's kind of the perception, right? Like, what was the guy? Was it Bob Ross? The really mellow guy. Okay, so here's some trees, and we'll just plant some little trees right here. And he would just tap like a sponge or a brush, and he would make incredible paintings. But if you looked closely at any of the details, there's nothing there. He doesn't detail anything. He's suggesting what it looks like with these shapes, but he doesn't really like draw out the shape, usually. And so when you go back and you look at the whole picture, you see the painting that they meant for you to see. And, a mix is so much like that. But when people hear an unmastered mix, I think they hear, it may not be as much anymore. Things are so different. But back in the day, they would hear something. They say, hey, this sounds okay, but something's just not right. And to them, they don't know if it's not right. The song's not right or the sound's not right. The public doesn't necessarily care about their sound so much. The guys with car stereos, of course, they do to some extent, usually. But in general, as long as they can hear it and stuff, they don't care too much. But there's a thing. And they would hear this missing thing in the unmastered song. Or you'd show them a mastered one, and they would hear it. And so they didn't know what it was. They couldn't tell you. And maybe through all this, I won't be able to tell you even what mastering is, right? But they heard something. Maybe it didn't sound right or wrong, but it didn't sound as right as it should to them. And that was the difference of mastering. It's almost like a gift wrapping of a package. We used to define mastering in different ways, but it's always a black art. It's not something I do. I don't claim to do it. I have, we've talked about this several times. I have plenty of mastering engineers that have had decades of relationship with, and I deal with them. But so anyway, let me read you this guy's question. So this is pretty good. So he says, hi, I know what tracking recording is and what mixing is, but I know almost nothing about mastering. Not even sure what it really means in terms of what they do with mix. Would be happy to learn. Also, do they use the same mastering for different formats like vinyl, CD, MP3, WAV, FLAC, or for streaming? Do they master the final mix for CD and use another master for FLAC, for example? Thanks. Now, these are killer questions. And it's so awesome to have the internet. I didn't have the internet when I was trying to learn this stuff, so it was it was a much more of an ordeal. So this is SWS1, and I'm not sure, is this SWS like Standing Water Studios, the guy who wrote the Reaper extension with Xenakios? I don't know. I keep trying to ask, and nobody ever tells me. So SWS1 says, mastering is the final preparation of a mix for its final delivery mechanism, be that an LP, a cassette, or one of the various digital streaming platforms. Included in that is final volume setting and EQ setting, which could and should vary by end platform. So to answer your question, mastering could involve producing several different products. A cheaper master may just generate one digital file and send it everywhere. Let's see. Simon says. Simon Larkin is saying, I listened to a lot of Funkadelic, and for some reason Bootsy and all always sounded out of tune, but it didn't matter. It still sounded good. Well, that phasey, chorusy, really wide chorus sound in disco is just part of it too, man. So I bet I wouldn't be surprised if they're in tune and those crazy wide pedals aren't whacking those things around. Okay. Anyway, this was a pretty good textbook definition. So, like he's saying, he didn't really talk about what might be involved. Like usually when you guys think about mastering, you're thinking about compression, EQ, and limiting, and whatever the distortion clipping stuff you guys do nowadays. But really, the mastering guy is the guy who delivers the final product to the end client's client. Really, you deliver it to the end client, but it's the product that guy can take out. So it could be a CD, or it could be for the pressing anyway. He delivers the thing to the pressing plant that's going to make the final. Man, this is complicated. Anyway, the mastering engineer prepares the final format that the thing's going to go out in. So you might be actually cutting a lathe on a record lathe. You might be cutting a record, and then that gets duplicated. He may be burning the master CD, or back in the day, it's like a PM. What was that, 1630? PCM 3340? What was that thing called? PCM 1630, right? That was the U-matic tape. That would go to like a master disc or whatever, and they would they would make the CDs out of that thing. That's really what mastering is. You got the final product before printing and duplication and all that stuff. So of course, if it's got to just go out to streaming, providing that is just providing the file, because you can copy that as many times as you want. It may or may not include the metadata, song titles, all that kind of stuff that may be part of the information. Everything's different now because we don't talk so much about the physical mediums of cassettes or CDs or vinyl, even though, of course, those are things that are making a comeback. But yeah. So I don't want to think about it in physical terms so much, but there's so much more you can do with digital. But there's so many competing formats, and like YouTube is asking for one thing, and everybody's talking about LUFS and everything else. That's why I leave it to the mastering guys to figure out, where's your format going? What is it going to a TV show? Is it going to Spotify? Whatever. Now we know because of the new normalization standards, they're just going to turn it down anyway if you make it too loud. But what if you put your stuff someplace where they don't? Then you're going to be the quietest. I mean, it's just such it's a nightmare. That's why I don't do it. I wouldn't know, but the guys who do it, they're good. So here's another. Let's see what this guy has to say. So Steve L. Mastering is largely, and I'm speaking broadly here, about making the recording consistent with industry standards and trends, as well as putting polishing touches on it, namely from someone who does it for a living and is really familiar and critical with the sounds. It's an extra set of ears in some ways, but also a really informed set of ears. Plus, mastering engineers tend to work in an environment where critical listening to the degree needed is something that's not available in the average studio or especially home studio. Whew, that's the other thing. Your mastering engineer is your check that you didn't screw something up. You shouldn't be screwing stuff up. But for instance, I've had rooms where there's a problem, and my mastering engineer would just tell me to knock out some stuff ahead of time, and it made it way easier. He could fix it anyway, but doing it on my end on the multi-tracks really helped. That's why it's good to have a relationship with them. Let's see. So this guy continues. They were also generally responsible for putting the cuts in order, balancing them all, putting the desired time in between, or sometimes making those decisions themselves and that sort of thing. So all those crossfades, a lot of times, that was your mastering engineer between the songs, like these live discs and stuff especially. In the olden days, things like vinyl were mastered differently than CDs because too much bass or sub-frequencies you couldn't hear could literally throw the turntable needle out of the groove. Though part of this is done in the disc making process, not necessarily a master tape. So those things, those elliptical compressors and stuff we hear so much about nowadays, that was from back then. I think those were meant to like mono the bass and keep you from having the needle jump out of the grooves. It continues. Today, most people use mastering in a similar way, but want to DIY. DIY mastering has been more about just bringing levels up to industry standards recently, up to the loudness wars. But now, there are new goals with all the streaming services. So we've talked about the loudness wars so many times. If you guys want to hear about it again, we'll talk about it again some other week. But that's what so many people, they call mastering. And when I see mastering advertised around here, it's usually a guy with just a limiter plug-in. He sticks your music in and just squishes the hell out of it, and then you call it mastered. Yeah, it sucks. but if you're in something where it's just completely everything's crushed, I mean, man, I don't know how much worse they're gonna make it if they're just gonna make it loud as anybody else anyway. But again, that's somebody else's problem. I used to get way too precious about it. You're going to ruin my record. But it's your record. You want to ruin it, go ruin it. I need to stop being a pecker like that. Okay, so he continues. I've heard raw tracks go to mastering houses and some come out improved, some come out so similar you can't even tell, and others come out different. I'm not going to say worse, but again, it's that engineer's taste that are being included in the mastering process too. But in the past, most people had the ability only to track and mix and didn't have great studios to do that in. Today, people are far more savvy about treating their room and so on, and on top of that, the music is consumed different. The way the music is consumed is different. In some ways, mastering isn't really as necessary as it used to be, And we could talk about that. That's kind of an interesting point, and I wonder about that point. As long as the person or whoever they're working with can get the final product to industry standards, in quotation marks. So I wonder, we have this sound check thing on iTunes or whatever, where they're supposed to relatively play your songs at a relatively same LUFS kind of level. And they're probably using the same kind of EBU R128 standards or whatever that they're using for the legal stuff, right? Maybe they got their own algorithms. I don't know. But the volumes are going to be pretty similar. And I don't know, maybe coming out of your earbuds, the sound quality won't matter so much. I don't know. People hate on those earbuds so much. And I want to be a snob, but I can usually get it to sound okay. Hey, Image. All right. So let me go on a little bit. But a good pro mastering engineer also understands a lot about spatial stuff, frequency issues, and more importantly, has the facilities and tools and experience to be able to assess a recording and determine what, if anything, will benefit it. I hear about this all the time from my heroes, but it only happened to me once, and it only happened on part of something. I hear so many times that the mixing engineer got it so perfect that the mastering engineer didn't do much. And I actually had a record where some songs he did a lot of stuff, and on one song he almost didn't do anything except for turn it up. And it's pretty interesting because they're your safety net. They're trying to, especially back then, they're trying to make the whole thing sound like it belonged together. And to hear from your mastering engineer that they didn't really do anything to this one, because you're like, hey, this one sounds pretty, it's just the right file, And to hear that, hey, no, I thought that was how it was supposed to be. Anything I do, maybe it could improve it a little bit. It was going to make it worse in other ways. It's so subjective. But to have your mastering engineer say that, and then you now have that track up as a reference for what you wanted it to sound like coming out of the mix, which is interesting. But generally, especially my first few albums, maybe first a lot of albums, when stuff went to the mastering lab, I thought, oh, this is perfect. It's not going to get any better. And it come back from the mastering lab, and what I had sent them to me now sounded like absolute crap. What they did made it sound so good that I was embarrassed to have sent what I sent to them. But nowadays the mastering isn't as drastic to me, which is either I'm getting better, or the mastering engineer's getting worse, or my ears are just shot and I can't tell. So hopefully I'm getting better. So when they say what, if anything, will benefit it, sometimes they don't touch much. See, and he continues. Okay, so Simon says, my latest protege mastered by me. I just use my normal mastering levels, EQ and slight widening, but very light touch. So he's got a link on Spotify, so you can hear what Simon's done with the mastering. Now, if Simon happens to Connor, if Simon happens to post the before the mastering and you guys can hear both, that would be super crazy awesome, because that's really what everybody always asks, man, because I used to have a lot of before and after examples, and none of my mastering engineers like to show up. It's the funniest thing. It's like they're too humble, but they're great, man. Let me just finish this guy's out. But yes, traditionally, different formats were mastered differently. Today, it's mainly about overall levels, because CDs can still be made with very high level, but streaming services now are turning things down that are too hot. So again, we're talking about levels. You're going to see a different part of the loudness wars and the LUFS wars, and everybody turns stuff down, whatever. Everybody's got different formats. There's a website out there that I think Mastering the Mix may have made that'll tell you if your song's going to get turned down by one of the streaming services. It's pretty cool. Okay, so some more questions, and SWS1 answers again. Given that a CD is 44.1 kilohertz 16-bit and FLAC can be much higher resolution, they by definition are mastered different, albeit minimally. EQ and volume could be the same or different, but the final step of the file is two different files, each with different text standards. They're just specifying, like, in a dictionary definition, what these what these specs would be. So the files are actually different. You're not just delivering one file. Let's see. So somebody else, I think, has been reading too much advertising and stuff, but who knows. It says, as a novice in home recording, okay, yep, I really like the Waves Abbey Road TG mastering chain and WLM plus loudness meter plugins for mastering. And who knows? You never know. You might get the next guy right there, but generally, I don't recommend you go buy one of those mastering chains and think you're gonna do it, unless that's really what you're into. If you are and you're able to do it, that is awesome, actually. But in general, if you're just looking like you think you're gonna be able to do a slap quick fix by buying some stuff, don't do it. Just pay a mastering engineer a very reasonable fee. Now, Dr. Frankencopter, he's got his 2 cents. The term harkens back to the very old days, as the process by which the master copy that was used to stamp out all copies of a recording was created. Over time, it's used as the final stage to set overall level, EQ, etc., to make an album sound consistent or a single competitive comparable with other releases. A mastering engineer can take a collection of mixes that were done individually and glue them together to sound like a cohesive production. Yes, even if they're done at different studios by different engineers, I kid you not. Even if it's a compilation, sometimes they have to force them into place. For folks who record and mix their own stuff, sending the music out to a mastering engineer is a good opportunity to get some additional ears, perspectives on the material. Hear, 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 amen. CD versus FLAC, yep, probably different target loudness levels. CDs tend to be louder than streaming. Okay. And we're talking about this earlier. Okay, so the wisdom right now is you get your LUFS level that you're after. YouTube says this, Spotify says that. Turn them all, make that master work for that level. Which sounds perfect to me. Sounds like a real good idea. Ooh, what is it? I just saw Julie. Are you on? Oops. Okay, sorry. I got confused. So it should be okay, and that should work out fine, but somebody might have the wrong file, and they'll put it in something where everything else is way the hell louder. And so you're still going to end up with what drove the loudness wars. I don't know that matters that much to me, because I think the big players are YouTube and Spotify, and they'll deal with it. But here's somebody who expounds on this a little bit. So HC Marcus, I'm not sure who this is, but he says, one problem with going with lower levels for streaming is that if the listener has defeated volume normalization or not turned it on, depending on the platform, notably Apple Music. So that's that sound check. I thought that was, wow, okay. Your recording won't sound as loud as others that are mastered hotter. Although the excessive loudness of days gone by is less common these days, thank goodness, unless you are in a position to deliver custom masters to the various streaming services depending on default settings, don't be overly concerned about the loudness penalty. Make it sound good, aim for a -8 to -10 LUFS or so for most contemporary styles, depending on preference, it can vary widely, and be done with it. A well-recorded CD at this level will sound good, and so will a stream version no matter where or how it's played. If this all sounds like gibberish, you might want to hire a mastering engineer. Yes, as has been noted already, the second set of ears might just hear things that are out of whack, usually at the extremes of the frequency spectrum, and make some very helpful EQ adjustments, in addition to getting your tracks to levels within industry standards. Okay, so the advice here is from this guy, and I'm inclined to agree with these people. Is make it loud, sadly, and then have the guys turn it down. But let me, so now, I think it's right. Loudnesspenalty.com, that's the website. So if you go to loudnesspenalty.com, you can just drag and drop a MP3 or a WAV file, and it'll tell you whether or not this particular streaming service is going to turn this thing down. It's very handy if you want to know this. But like this other guy is saying, maybe you just want to crank it and they'll turn it down. Now, I have one of these guys muted because he's a true believer. So I'm not sure what he actually said. So here's Crossbones says, I am technically a mastering guy. My job for the most part is to make several songs work together using EQ, sometimes compression, fixed mix quirks, etc. Sometimes I have to make single songs ready. One interesting thing I became aware of years ago is all the really pro people have someone else go through their songs after the mixing phase. The people who do it themselves always end up languishing in their friends' parents' basements. I'm not trying to be mean. While I think that talented artists are the most important part, they rarely are able to bring something to the market. I also play guitar and bass on a lot of people's projects. Knowing what I know now, I would never make mastering decisions on a project I perform on. It's usually a bad decision. That took a long time to accept. And this is, I know you guys really get on me about this. I get hammered on this all the time. I don't really like this idea where I keep seeing all these like project studios that are also mastering labs, mastering their own stuff. They're just compounding their own mistakes. But when you're an artist and you're doing that, I bet you're probably doing 1,000 times that. But anyway, you know, if you make it sound good, make it sound good. Okay. Now, Simon, ever determined to not have you spend money, it looks like. If you know what you're looking at, the Master Meters in Reaper tells you all you need to know. You don't need fancy plugins. See, if you've been doing this kind of crap a long time, there's like little skills you pick up, and it's funny. Like for me, nope, that meter doesn't tell me jack. And I admit it, man. I have no problem. I can tell if, you know, what the peak is, and I can tell if it's been, if there's audio going through it. But in the same way that when I look at a drum track, I can tell you all kinds of stuff about what drum's being hit, how hard it's being hit, everything. You know, we get good at the little things that we do, I think. So good mastering guys probably looking at the meters and can tell all kinds of stuff. But this is a really good thing that what this guy says. Knowing what I know now, I would never make mastering decisions on a project I perform on. It's usually a bad decision that took a long time to accept. Same as a doctor or a lawyer who treats themselves or represents themselves as a fool for a client, right? Okay, Rockman Dan says, with regards to the loudness wars, yes, they're technically over, thanks to EBU R128 or whatever, right? But it still matters. As said above, not all streaming services and platforms do loudness normalization between tracks, and certainly not in the same way, so you're essentially gambling. I thought they were going to kind of standardize. Oh, well. My last album, since I was only submitting to digital platforms and not getting CDs made, first time not doing that, I drank the Kool-Aid about the loudness penalty and intentionally set a few more dB of dynamic range on the final master, figuring the extra headroom would help the drums pop out more. Well, lo and behold, when I listen to it on YouTube Music, it plays back quieter than other stuff, which pisses me off. So I think, for the time being, the process of getting a master, at least in rock music, to be hot but not crappy sounding is still the only game in town. Getting good loud instead of bad loud is most definitely a skill. That's true. Like I could crank a limiter down and make it technically crazy loud, and it'll sound like total crap. And somehow these guys, even back in the cassette days, I used to try and like use reel-to-reels to wipe out some peaks, and you know, but the mastering engineer could always make it louder and just still sound better than what I was doing. There are plenty of great albums that came out during the loudness wars that sound great and weren't hurt by the comparative RMS levels, and of course there are plenty that sound like doggy-doo. At the end of the day, we don't have to choose between sounding good and being loud. If you know what you're doing, you can get both. Man, I mean, that's so much. I mean, anytime we talk about mastering, we're going to get back into the loudness wars every time, right? So here's Modder Paul. Okay, so he's going to put another perspective here. I think this is an important aspect that I didn't see specifically mentioned. The main purpose for mastering is to make your own material sound competitive with music from other artists when played on the same format. If you're streaming on Spotify and you hear 3 songs from other artists and they all have similar loudness, bass presence, balance, etc., and then your song comes on and is half as loud and sounds muffled, then you needed a better final master. A lot of this harkens back to radio days. Imagine listening to the radio and needing to change the treble, bass, and volume for every song. Okay, so think about that. When you listen to the radio, it's got a certain sound to it. You ever notice that really slick radio sound, you know, especially when the announcer's like just pressure, just sound pressure, just slamming that mic and this treble boosting, crazy treble boosted blasting nuttery. And there was a very consistent sound and level to the radio stuff. So these guys were running all these processors on their radio stations. So I'll read this over again. A lot of this harkens back to radio days. Imagine listening to the radio and needing to change the treble, bass, and volume for every song. That would be a turn off for the listener. Because radio stations realized that, they put their own processing on the broadcast signals, especially equalizers and compressors. That way, all songs have very similar levels in sonic content, regardless of the actual song or music. But I wonder, how would you do that back then? So the Orban was there, right? The Orban, the Orban, what the hell was that thing called? There was an Orban, I think it was a multi-channel dynamics processor. I really don't know what the hell that thing did, but because how does the radio make it all sound the same automatically? So there had to be some kind of dynamic level sensing EQ thingy. What in the world was the name of that Orban thing, Simon? You're old enough to know. Tell me. Was it Orban? It was some kind of broadcast they had on the end of their thing. Okay, so if you sent a non-mastered mix to a radio station, it could sound very different from what you expected, often from the compression. The previously quiet parts would get boosted beyond all reason, and the loud parts would get their instrument and balances ruined. Just a loud snare drum, for example, could make everything else in the mix go down in volume. So if you guys ever heard the term dynamic inversion, there used to be a local radio, a station that would, it's kind of budget. I think it was kind of pirate, and they would let us bring songs on there all the time. And sometimes they weren't mastered. And whatever processing the guy was using, this would happen. The clean stuff would be crazy loud because it wasn't loud enough to trigger this compressor or whatever the dynamics processing it was. And let's see. Sorry, let me press these things out. When the distorted part came in, it was just crazy quiet. It was like, or like it was said, when a snare hit, it would just duck the whole song down for quite a while, actually. And I think it was the same one that they're using to talk when they're using you guys know the duckers, when the music's playing and the DJ talks and it kind of turns down the volume on the song so you can hear the DJ's voice. That's some of these processors they had. Let me continue. So recording engineers realized so much processing on the radio would play havoc with their mixes, sometimes drastically. And so the challenge became sending out masters that already had most of the broadcast style processing in the final mastered mix. So the broadcast processors did not change the mix drastically, if at all. You got the mix you expected when the song hit the airwaves. This is where the term loudness wars came from. I don't think that's quite exactly true. So originally, a mastering engineer's job was to sequence the songs on an album and make them all flow at the same EQ and loudness. Now it is more about making a single mix fit in with other artists, although both end goals really have similar approaches. But that's true. You're more about, like you said, making your material sound competitive with music from other artists on the same format. I'm not sure. Okay, so there really was a loudness wars before the loudness wars we talk about. The late 70s and early 80s had their own loudness wars. And if you don't think so, check out some disco albums and look at the insane, as close to a square wave as you could get back then, which you really couldn't get all that close, but they did their damnedest to. Like, there was so much pumping and breathing and stuff on there. It was crazy. But so he's right. That really was a loudness war. But and there was a challenge back then. Even in the 50s, there was like a challenge to make it the loudest thing for radio. So somebody else asked, and we already talked about this a little bit. Can it be possible for a single track sometimes that a recording and mixing is good enough that there is no need for mastering? Yes. Nobody answered a bummer. But the answer. Technically you could master your own stuff, and technically, who knows? You might just put the whole mastering chain on your mix bus, and you might just win that way. But I wouldn't. But you never know. Maybe the mastering engineer says this is fine and puts it out. Give it a try. But I would, if I were starting out, whatever. Definitely do a before and after with a really good mastering engineer, and listen to what what's different. They may not tell you what they did, or you may not understand even if they did tell you, or maybe you do. But you do hear the difference, and that's the important part, is to get what you want to hear. Think about what you want to hear in your head. Get the sound in your head to come out of the speakers, okay? That's the goal. That's my goal. I don't know if that's your goal, but that's my goal. If you're learning from me, that is definitely a goal. Get the sound you hear in your head out the speakers. But sometimes you want to experiment and you want sound coming out of the speakers to get into your head. That's okay too. But remember, when we're doing mastering and stuff, we're probably more about the sound in the ears coming out the speakers. Anyhow, I got stuff to do. I will see you guys next week. Later. Okay.